The affluent CEO thrived on solitude and authority, until the sight of a small girl in a white dress weeping by herself dismantled all his preconceived notions in an instant. Adrian Harper had crafted his existence in the embrace of quietude. In his realm, everything unfolded with precision, a sense of predictability enveloping him. His penthouse on the 42nd floor offered a view of the bustling city below, yet it remained untouched by its clamor, courtesy of bespoke soundproofing. His office was a refuge of soft whispers, gentle steps, and the faint murmur of the city, forever softened by the heavy glass walls. His car moved through traffic in a hushed manner, slipping by like a whisper in the night. Adrian didn't merely favor silence, it was essential for him. He held the conviction that noise signified frailty, that disorder shattered concentration, and that tranquility could only be attained when all distractions were entirely eliminated. With their incessant wails, messy fingers, and capricious nature, they had no place in his existence. He didn't harbor any animosity towards them, rather, he perceived them as an entirely different breed, untamed, passionate, and boisterous. In that quietude, he meticulously constructed his realm, layer by layer, through years of strategic intent and steadfast isolation. That morning, much like the ones before it, unfolded with impeccable precision. At 6 a.m., he rose, engaged in a workout in his exclusive gym, meticulously examined investor reports while savoring a precisely measured cup of espresso, and departed his penthouse promptly at 8:15. The sole departure from his regular routine was a meeting arranged by his assistant with a prospective partner who requested a neutral setting, specifically a secluded spot in a public park close to the investor's residence. Adrian loathed the notion yet acquiesced, recognizing that the investment justified the hassle. He showed up 10 minutes ahead of schedule, as expected. The park exuded an unexpected tranquility on that weekday morning, with trees just starting to blossom and the soft chirping of birds echoing gently above. He lingered by the appointed bench, glancing at his watch, then at his phone, mentally assessing how much longer he could endure the wait. Suddenly, a noise shattered the tranquility he had so meticulously crafted. Initially, it was subtle, far enough to be overlooked, a gentle whimpering sound wafting through the air. He cast a quick look behind him, irritation flickering in his eyes, anticipating the presence of a dog. Yet it intensified. The sound transformed into a series of strangled cries, sharp and wavering. Adrian breathed out deliberately, fighting the impulse to turn and leave. He was utterly devoid of time or patience for any disruptions. Yet the weeping persisted. Indeed, it was approaching steadily. With a hint of hesitation, almost contrary to his instincts, he shifted to find the origin. What he witnessed brought him to a standstill. A young girl, perhaps 3 years of age, sat on a bench a short distance away, her knees drawn up to her chest. Her white dress was wrinkled and somewhat stained, and her matching sun hat sat crookedly atop her head. Her delicate hands pressed against her eyes, and her cheeks were stained with tears. Her delicate blonde hair escaped from beneath the hat in a charmingly disheveled manner. She lifted her gaze, an instinctive awareness drawing her attention, and their eyes locked in a moment of connection. Dark eyes, profound, expansive, and unsettlingly recognizable. Adrian stood still, taken aback, not only by the unfolding scene but also by the mysterious attraction he experienced. She resembled a certain someone. A familiar face from the past, long forgotten until now. Someone whose absence had previously created a void in his otherwise orderly existence, a void he had closed off and never dared to explore again. He urged himself to turn and leave. The girl would belong to another's concerns. A child, perhaps adrift, or one whose guardian lingered close by. Yet she remained still. No grown-up arrived. And then, in a quivering tone that resonated within him, she asked, Are you Mr. Harper?" His breath hitched. He kept his name to himself while in the park. No one had any idea who he truly was, he had taken great care to ensure that remained the case. Yet here she found herself, seated in solitude, calling out for him by name. Adrian approached with deliberate slowness, heart racing in anticipation. Indeed, he replied with a hint of hesitation. May I ask who you are? The young girl brushed away her tears with the back of her hand. Maggie mentioned that you could be stopping by. That name struck him like a lightning flash. Maggie. It simply wasn't possible. Maggie had been the ultimate friend, the trusted confidant, the steadfast presence beside Hazel throughout the months Adrian had sought to erase from memory. The girl glanced upward once more and softly said, My name's Lily. I am 3 years old. Then, in a gentler tone, I believe you might be my father. At that instant, everything shifted. The tranquility he had safeguarded for years fractured like fragile glass, not due to turmoil or calamity, but from the gentle, trembling voice of a small girl in white who mirrored his gaze. Adrian remained still, his rational thoughts racing to find a reason, while his heart thudded erratically in his chest. Lily stood before him, her gaze reflecting his own, and in the midst of the surprise coursing through him, he found it impossible to overlook the remarkable likeness they shared. Her voice, gentle and uncertain, lingered in his mind, resonating over and over, I believe you're my father. For someone who had consistently regarded emotion as mere distraction and unpredictability as a flaw, Adrian unexpectedly found himself overwhelmed by both. The breeze whispered softly among the branches overhead, yet no one stepped into the light. No hurried guardian showed up. It was merely her. Only Lily. And she had arrived with the anticipation of his presence. Just as he was about to reply, a woman rushed over the grass, panting and visibly upset. Her coat was fastened incorrectly, and strands of hair were slipping free from the clip that struggled to keep it all together. As soon as she spotted Adrian beside Lily, her pace diminished, her eyes growing wide with a mix of recognition and unease. Mr. Harper, she inquired, her tone implying that she was already aware of the response. Adrian faced her, his demeanor taut and watchful, a multitude of inquiries brewing just beneath his composed surface. Indeed, he replied with calm assurance. Indeed, you are. She paused, her gaze shifting between him and the young girl before she took a step forward. My name is Maggie. I was a friend of Hazel's. Lily has had her nanny by her side since the very beginning of her life. Upon hearing Hazel's name, a torrent of memories rushed into Adrian's mind, overwhelming him like a sudden deluge. Hazel. The woman who had vanished from his existence without a word of reason. The sole individual who had ever managed to penetrate his reality and disturb its equilibrium. It had been 3 long years since he last laid eyes on her, 3 years without the sound of her voice, 3 years without even a single message from her. And now, there stood Maggie, a figure linked to that chapter of his life, facing him with the undeniable evidence of Hazel's absence, delicately swathed in white lace and tiny, trembling fingers. Where could she be? Adrian inquired, fully aware of the response that awaited him. Maggie's eyes brimmed with tears as she nodded, struggling to swallow. Hazel has left us. A collision involving a vehicle. A mere few weeks prior. I have been looking after Lily since that time, but she paused, her gaze fixed on Lily, a look of anguish crossing her face. Before her passing, Hazel revealed all to me. Concerning you. Concerning the events that transpired. She requested that if anything were to happen to her, should seek you out. To guide Lily to your side. Adrian's knees trembled beneath him, yet he remained steadfast, summoning an air of calm. It all came crashing down at once, the loss of Hazel, the revelation of a daughter he had never known, and the unexpected burden of responsibility that landed in his lap without any forewarning. He glanced at Lily, who remained quietly beside him, her tiny fingers clutching the edge of his coat. She had not shed another tear. She observed, poised and patient, as if she innately grasped that her destiny hinged on this very instant. Why didn't she share that with me? Adrian's voice had softened, not harsh but filled with fatigue, a deep sense of longing. What kept her silent all this time? Maggie's voice carried a soft yet resolute quality. She had the desire to. It seemed she composed letters, perhaps even attempted to reach out by phone. Yet Hazel felt a wave of fear wash over her. She believed you would distance yourself from her. She expressed that her intention was not to confine you or disrupt your life. Thus, she acted in accordance with her best judgment. She nurtured Lily on her own. However, upon realizing that her time could be limited, she reconsidered her decision. She understood that you deserved to be informed. She revealed it all to me. Hazel had a deep trust in you, more than you might realize, even if she never expressed it openly. Adrian paused before replying. The heaviness of the moment settled upon him, a burden as solid as rock. His entire existence, meticulously organized and impeccable, founded on unwavering certainty, had suddenly transformed beneath him. In the midst of that quake stood a 3-year-old girl with his eyes, observing him not with fear, but with a serene hopefulness that unsettled him more than anything else ever could. He lowered himself, locking eyes with her. "Lily," he said, striving to maintain a calm tone, "would you like to join me for a bit? Perhaps just to grab a bite to eat. A place that radiates warmth." She nodded with unwavering certainty. Understood. In that moment, she slipped her delicate hand into his, as if it were meant to be there from the very start. As they strolled away from the park, with Maggie lagging behind, Adrian sensed a fissure beginning to emerge in the fortress he had constructed around his existence. It lacked theatrics, yet it held authenticity, a quiet unveiling. He was still uncertain about the implications of this. He was uncertain about the role of a father. He was uncertain whether he truly believed he could be. Yet, she was present. Hazel had vanished. In that moment, the little girl entered his quiet world and uttered his name as if they shared a lifetime of familiarity. Amidst the chaos, Adrian Harper found himself surprisingly grounded. He simply sensed a need. Adrian found himself engulfed in a sense of unpreparedness unlike anything he had ever experienced before. In just one afternoon, the familiar routine he had held onto for years crumbled away. In a serene nook of a quaint cafe, he found himself facing a 3-year-old girl. His gaze fell upon the untouched cup of black coffee before him, while Lily, with her innocent charm, quietly sipped apple juice through a cheerful red straw. Maggie lingered close, observant yet quiet, allowing them their distance while still holding on just a bit. The young one, his young one, exhibited an unusual serenity, her tiny legs swaying beneath the table, her gaze exploring the cafe with a gentle, inquisitive wonder. Adrian found himself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, grappling with the astonishing revelation that Hazel had concealed such a significant secret from him. At the same time, he couldn't shake the feeling that the little girl sitting across from him had an uncanny sense of familiarity. He discovered himself observing her, not merely the eyes that reflected his own or the gentle cascade of her light hair, but the nuanced expressions on her face, the manner in which her lips pressed together during contemplation, and how her brow knitted when the waitress lingered too long. It was unsettling, akin to observing a mirror of feelings he had long been taught to hide. And yet she wasn't distant or reserved, she radiated warmth, careful yet courageous, as if she had experienced more in her brief 3 years than many grown-ups could bear. He inquired about her culinary preferences. She replied softly, "Macaroni. And pancakes, of course." However, not simultaneously. Maggie let out a soft chuckle, and Adrian nodded, gesturing to the waitress. As the food arrived, Lily delicately nibbled at her plate, while he remained quiet, searching for the right words. He struggled with this. He found himself uncertain about whether to engage with a child as if they were delicate or to treat them as equals. Yet, it appeared that Lily required little encouragement. She shared with him her fondness for clouds and music, mentioning that Maggie sang lullabies each night, despite not being her biological mother. She shared with him memories of a home filled with a piano, lush plants, and a large window that welcomed the sunlight. And when she spoke of Hazel, just once, referring to her as mommy in the past tense, his breath hitched. As they stepped out of the cafe and into the refreshing coolness of the evening air, Adrian came to a halt on the sidewalk. He cast his gaze upon Maggie. "I must grasp every detail," he asserted with conviction. All that Hazel shared with you. I seek the whole story, not mere pieces. Maggie gave a slight nod. I will share all the information I possess. However, this is not the place. She presented him with an envelope. This marked the final correspondence penned by Hazel. She requested that I pass it on to you solely if you encountered Lily. In the solitude of his apartment, Adrian found himself seated in his office, the letter clutched tightly in his hands. His penthouse, typically serene in a manner he had always valued, now seemed overwhelmingly still. He could hear Maggie reading to Lily in the guest room he had quickly set up. The soft whisper of conversations far away felt like a reverberation from another existence. With trembling hands, he slowly opened the letter. Hazel's handwriting had a gentle, comforting quality. She was the one to say sorry first. For vanishing, for concealing reality, for questioning him. She explained to him that her departure wasn't due to a lack of love, rather, it was because her love for him was so profound that she felt compelled to go. She feared he might perceive it as confinement, that the man who thrived in a realm of quiet and structure would view a child as a danger to his existence. She expressed that she had attempted to reach out to him once but faltered in her resolve. Each day, she gazed into Lily's face, recognizing fragments of him, and questioned whether her decision had been the right one. And when she fell ill, truly ill, she understood how mistaken she'd been to keep them separated. Hazel wrote that she didn't want Lily to grow up without knowing you. I wished for her to feel valued, not as if she were hidden away. My only wish was for her safety. And now, I must place my trust in you to ensure her safety. I understand that you may not subscribe to the idea of destiny, Adrian, but if you find yourself reading this, perhaps there's something greater than us at play that brought us to this moment. Kindly, cherish her. Not simply because she belongs to you. However, she truly deserves it. As he completed the letter, Adrian leaned back in his chair, a wave of emotion washing over him. It had been years since he last shed a tear. Not at the time of his father's passing. Not in times of heartbreak. Not after Hazel departed. Yet, at this moment, he found himself compelled to do so. Quiet, held-back tears trickled down his cheeks as the burden of it all bore down on him. He had lost Hazel once more, this time for good. Yet he had received something equally tangible, equally unchangeable. A young one. His offspring. He ascended gradually, strolled down the corridor, and paused at the entrance. Maggie lifted her gaze from the pages of the book she was engrossed in. Lily was already drifting into slumber, nestled beneath the blanket, her petite form pressed against Maggie's side. Adrian slipped in silently and took a knee beside the bed. For a moment, he simply observed her as she breathed, her expression serene, her hand gently placed against her cheek. He murmured softly, almost inaudibly, "I'm not going anywhere." For the very first time in his existence, he genuinely felt it. The next morning, Adrian rose earlier than he typically did, well before the sun had pierced the dense city skyline. The room remained shrouded in darkness, yet he refrained from grasping his phone or his planner as was his usual habit. Instead, he reclined there, gazing at the ceiling, attuned not to silence, but to something beyond it. And then he listened closely. The soft patter of tiny footsteps, a delicate melody being hummed softly, and the subtle groan of the guest room door opening in the distance. It was not mere noise. It was existence. It truly happened. For the first time in as long as he could recall, he found himself without the urge to block it out. He rose gradually, donned his clothes at a leisurely pace, and ventured into a day that had shifted beyond his sole ownership. Maggie was busy at work in the kitchen, crafting breakfast with care. The aroma of scrambled eggs and toast wafted through the air as Lily perched on a counter chair that seemed oversized for her small frame. She playfully kicked her feet against a wooden stool, clad in pajamas adorned with cheerful suns and fluffy clouds. Upon seeing him, a gentle smile graced her lips, yet words eluded her. She observed him with a sense of wonder, as if she were piecing together the significance he held in her life. He welcomed her softly, uncertain whether to behave nonchalantly or to convey that this moment held greater significance than anything else. Rather than getting lost in his thoughts, he simply inquired if she would like orange juice, and she nodded, as though this was a familiar routine for them. As Maggie placed the plates before them, Adrian attempted to brush aside the odd sense of familiarity that had already begun to settle in. He was unaccustomed to the presence of others in his space at such an early hour. His mornings often unfolded in solitude, crafted with a focus on efficiency and a serene quietude. Yet, there emerged a dialogue, light and straightforward, pondering whether strawberries surpassed bananas and if one could don socks while sleeping. Crumbs scattered across the table, a spoon chimed softly against a glass, and a delicate giggle escaped as he grimaced at a piece of fruit that was just too sour. And in some way, he found a certain peace with it all. Following breakfast, Maggie softly guided him away as Lily entertained herself with her stuffed bunny by the window. Her voice carried a gentle timbre, careful yet heartfelt. She shared with him the details of Hazel's last days, describing the rapid decline in her health, the difficult decision to allow Lily to witness her in those challenging moments, and the frantic planning that ensued once she understood that survival was uncertain. Adrian absorbed the words in silence, each one weighing heavily on his heart. She conveyed to him that Hazel's love for him had remained unwavering, that her departure stemmed not from rejection but from a deep-seated fear of jeopardizing their bond, fear that she might become a burden in a life she believed he wished to keep unaltered. Maggie acknowledged that she didn't see eye to eye with Hazel's decision to keep the secret, yet she honored her wishes. She expressed that Hazel's deepest sorrow lay not in the illness or the battle, but in the missed opportunity to allow Lily and Adrian to share time together from the very start. It was the days they had longed for. Adrian sensed that heaviness sink profoundly within him. He struggled to come to terms with the reality that 3 years of his daughter's life had slipped by without his presence. Initial strides. Initial phrases. Initial tears. He had overlooked each one of them. And yet, Lily appeared to hold no bitterness towards him. She felt no fear in his presence. She was careful, indeed, yet her gaze suggested that she felt he had a rightful place in her life now. Later that day, as Maggie attended to some errands, Adrian whisked Lily away to a quaint little bookstore nearby. It marked the inaugural occasion he found himself in public with her, just the two of them. Onlookers were taken aback as they spotted the typically composed and famously unflappable CEO tenderly holding the hand of a little girl with pigtails. She selected a book adorned with sparkles on the cover and held it tightly as if it were a precious treasure. At the register, she inquired softly, "Will you read it to me tonight?" It was merely a tiny inquiry, yet it took him by surprise. He came to the understanding that he had never experienced the joy of a bedtime story before. He had never experienced the simple act of tucking a child in. He nodded, a faint smile appearing, and replied, "Of course." That evening, as Lily nestled beneath the cozy blankets in the space that was gradually transforming into her own, Adrian settled beside her and began to peruse the shimmering book. Initially, his voice carried a certain rigidity, accustomed to the cadence, yet Lily appeared unfazed. She observed him with bright eyes, grinning as he animated the characters with various voices, even chuckling when he attempted and stumbled in his impression of a talking bear. Upon his conclusion, she refrained from requesting another tale. She softly murmured, "Mommy would read to me just like that. Yet you approach it in a unique way. I appreciate your approach as well." Adrian remained by her side until slumber enveloped her, her delicate hand gently placed near his arm. As he finally stood up and ventured into the hallway, he found himself leaning against the wall, engulfed by a wave of emotions. This wasn't about compensating for time that had slipped away. It was about taking the first step, utilizing the resources at hand. What he had was a little girl, a bunny in one hand and a book in the other, who welcomed him into her life without demanding perfection, only his presence. Simply a door. And Adrian was starting to realize that perhaps, just perhaps, that was something he could offer. The subsequent days fell into a cadence Adrian had not anticipated, one that felt oddly instinctive despite its inherent unfamiliarity. He found himself rising earlier than he typically would, not to dive into emails or gear up for conference calls, but to ensure that Lily had her beloved cereal and that her shoes were properly placed on her feet. The framework he had previously revered was now gently reshaped by the unexpected, with mornings alive with strewn toys, spontaneous laughter, and inquiries that strayed far from the realms of business projections or market analyses. Rather than resisting, he discovered himself embracing it, as if an alternate version of himself was surfacing from beneath the constraints he had outgrown. He started to observe the tiniest details, like the way Lily's nose crinkled when she focused, the gentle hum that escaped her lips while she colored, and how her whole being appeared to ease when he held her hand. She approached him with care, still uncertain about his place in her life, yet she remained receptive, never distant, and with each passing day, a bit more trust blossomed. Adrian was discovering the art of being present in ways he had never envisioned. He often interrupted meetings to take calls from Maggie or to video chat with Lily before her nap, and not once did he experience guilt or shame about placing her needs above a spreadsheet. For the first time, he understood that he had no reason to seek forgiveness for simply being himself. One afternoon, as Adrian sat in his office poring over contracts, Maggie entered quietly and presented him with a folder. Her expression was grave, prompting him to put everything aside without hesitation. She clarified that it was the birth certificate and medical documents of Lily, records that Hazel had preserved but never disclosed. As he turned the pages, he felt a rush of emotion when he spotted his name under Father. Hazel had never merely taken on the burden by herself, she had always been aware of his identity as Lily's father, asserting her claim on paper even when she couldn't connect with him face to face. It was her quiet method of linking them, even in their separation. Within the folder, Maggie had tucked away a petite envelope marked with Hazel's distinctive handwriting. It read plainly, "For Adrian, if he ever comes." Adrian gazed at it for an extended moment before deciding to open it. The note was brief, yet it contained all the reassurance he sought. Hazel recounted the night she discovered she was pregnant, how she stood outside his building with trembling hands, then turned away, certain he would opt for silence instead of love. She acknowledged her mistake, not in recognizing his true self, but in doubting his ability to make different choices. She captured the essence of Lily's first laugh, her inaugural word, and the way she held on to the notion of her dad, despite their never having crossed paths. "She always believed you were real," Hazel wrote. "She never needed convincing. And I think, deep down, I never did either." Adrian perused the letter thrice, each reading deepening his contemplation, before he meticulously folded it and secured it within the confines of the top drawer of his desk. His hands quivered ever so slightly, not from fury or remorse, but from a profound inner turmoil, a moment of reckoning. Hazel had offered him another opportunity. It seemed unjust that she hadn't been there to witness it all, yet he still had the chance to uphold her faith in him. He was still capable of providing Lily with all that she desired. As the night deepened and Lily drifted into slumber, Adrian felt an inexplicable pull that led him to her room. He lingered at the edge of her bed, observing the gentle rise and fall of her small frame with every breath she took. A gentle nightlight cast warm, changing hues across the walls, while the bunny she cherished lay snugly under her arm. He draped the blanket more snugly around her shoulders, then settled into the chair opposite, caught in a moment of indecision about whether to stay or go. He lingered in thought, reflecting on Hazel and the heavy price his silence had exacted in the past. He had always thought that control was his greatest asset, yet it had prevented him from experiencing the most significant moments of his life. He no longer desired that. He was determined not to overlook anything else. The following morning, he reached out to his legal team. He requested that they initiate the necessary paperwork for legal guardianship and adoption. He desired his name on every document not merely for the sake of truth, but to ensure Lily understood she was wanted, chosen, not merely a duty taken on by chance. When he expressed to Lily his desire to be her official dad, she tilted her head in that contemplative manner she often did and inquired, "But aren't you already?" He smiled at her, his heart constricting, and replied, "Yes. However, I am determined to ensure that everyone is aware of it as well." Without uttering another word, she simply extended her arms and embraced him tightly. Adrian embraced her tightly, sensing the delicate pressure of her petite arms and the potential they embodied. He recognized the vast expanse of knowledge ahead of him and acknowledged that errors would be part of the journey, yet in that instant, he let go of his fear. Because she had already embraced him, imperfect, unsure, and striving. And that was more than sufficient to get started. Spring arrived gently, caressing the city with warmth and illumination that breathed new life into everything. For Adrian, the world outside had always seemed remote, too swift, too noisy, too unpredictable, yet now he observed the scent of the air after rain, the way the trees outside Lily's window flourished in subtle hues, and how every aspect of his life had gradually transformed into something he had never anticipated. Mornings transformed from a whirlwind of meetings to a gentle routine of packing lunch boxes and untangling Lily's hair as she shared her dreams. Evenings transformed into lively moments, brimming with inquiries, soft laughter, chaotic meals, and occasionally, tears. Yet, it did not overpower him. It centered him. It provided his existence with contours that seemed tangible, despite their flaws. Lily was blossoming rapidly, evolving in ways that left him in awe. She had adapted to her new surroundings with a remarkable resilience that only children seem to embody. Her presence infused each room, not with disruption, but with a warmth that enveloped all within. Adrian observed as she transformed his stark, minimalist environment into a warm, inviting home. The art was askew on the refrigerator, stuffed animals huddled in the corners of the living room, and her shoes consistently found their way beneath his desk. He never shifted them. He appreciated how they signaled her presence, transforming his home into a shared space, no longer solely his own. Yet, despite the apparent smoothness of the situation, he could feel an undercurrent beneath Lily's serene facade. She had adapted, indeed, yet there were evenings when she would softly withdraw, perching on the windowsill in stillness, gazing at the stars as if anticipating a voice to break the quiet. There were times when she would refer to him as Dad, and other times when she hesitated, uncertain. He never forced the issue. He allowed her to approach him at her own pace, despite the way each uncertain glance pulled at something profound within him. After a long day, Lily suggested having a picnic on the floor instead of the usual dining table. Adrian nodded readily, and they laid out a blanket in the center of the living room, enjoying peanut butter sandwiches and sipping apple juice from delicate teacups. She sat in silence, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edges of her bread's crust. At last, in a soft whisper, she inquired, "Do you believe that if Mommy were here, she would feel proud of me?" Adrian sensed the silence enveloping them. He leaned in and softly brushed her hair away from her eyes. "I believe," he murmured gently, "your mother would be incredibly proud, Lily. It's not solely due to your courage or intelligence, but rather because of the profound love you carry within you. I believe that's a gift from her to you." Lily gazed at him for an extended moment before gently leaning into his side. Her silence spoke volumes, and he found no need for words. He encircled her shoulders with his arm, cradling her gently until her breaths became steady and her eyelids fluttered with the weight of slumber. He lifted her gently to bed that night and remained by her side until she drifted into a deep sleep, the soothing cadence of her breath grounding him like nothing else ever could. As the journey of adoption progressed, Adrian discovered he was sharing more stories about Lily with others. His colleagues were taken aback, not only by the revelation of his daughter but also by the depth of his commitment to the role. He brought her to the office one afternoon, and rather than feeling uneasy in the new environment, Lily strolled beside him with assurance, grasping his hand and greeting everyone she encountered with a wave. She perched in his chair, spinning in delightful circles, before presenting him with a drawing crafted specifically for his office. There they were, two figures intertwined beneath the shade of a tree, the phrase, "My dad," scrawled in unsteady crayon at the top. He no longer displayed business awards. He elegantly showcased that drawing in a frame. What astonished him the most wasn't the extent of Lily's dependence on him, but rather the depth of his own reliance on her. She pushed against his thoughts, unsealed the hidden corners within him, and brought forth laughter he hadn't experienced since his youth. She opened him up, and rather than shying away, he embraced it. One evening, after finishing a story and settling her into bed, Lily took his hand and said, "You don't have to be perfect, you know. Your presence brings me joy." The words lingered in his mind long after she drifted off to sleep. For a man who had dedicated his life to constructing barriers, Lily was the one who revealed that love wasn't defined by perfect moments or extravagant acts. It was about being there, being acknowledged, and remaining, even when the journey was tough. Adrian had no intentions of venturing out. Adrian had never set foot in a courtroom for any personal matter. Until recently, his existence had been dominated by lawyers, contracts, boardrooms, and business disputes, all maintained at a distance, mediated by assistants or legal teams. Yet again, he found himself seated in a modest wooden chair, within the confines of a small family court, anticipating the moment when the judge would summon him by name. He didn't hold the position of CEO here. He lacked power, wealth, and control. He was merely a man yearning for the title of father, recognized, sanctioned, without doubt. Lily perched beside him, her legs dangling just above the floor, her fingers gently clasping a small plush rabbit that had been her constant companion since Maggie gifted it to her following Hazel's funeral. She donned a soft yellow dress that Maggie had chosen for the event, her serene expression revealing to Adrian that she was deep in thought, despite her silence. Maggie was present as well, positioned a few rows back, providing him with the quiet encouragement she consistently offered. She had been more than just a friend to Hazel. She transformed into a connection linking the past and the future, a constant figure who reminded Lily of her origins, while providing comfort about her journey ahead. The court clerk announced their names, and Adrian grasped Lily's hand, leading her softly as they rose and made their way to the front. The judge was a gentle-faced woman in her 50s who offered a smile to Lily before shifting her attention to Adrian, embodying the practiced, neutral warmth that individuals in her role often perfected. She inquired about his name, his profession, and his reasons for wanting to adopt Lily. He responded to each question with clarity, his voice unwavering, his determination strong. When the judge inquired if Lily was comfortable with Adrian adopting her, she nodded and softly replied, "I already call him Dad sometimes," prompting a smile from the judge. After navigating through several legal procedures, it was accomplished. In the perception of both the law and society, Adrian Harper held the title of Lily's father. There was no ceremony, no music or applause, yet Adrian sensed a profound change within himself. It felt like a long-lost piece had finally found its rightful home. Lily grasped the weight of the moment, even if it eluded her completely. She tightened her grip on his hand and softly murmured, "We're a real family now, right?" And Adrian, his voice trembling under the burden of it all, remarked, "We always were." Afterward, they ventured out for ice cream, just the two of them, settling on a bench outside the parlor, observing the flow of people as they strolled by. Lily playfully swung her legs, her curiosity bubbling over as she inquired whether, now that they were officially together, a trip to the beach might be on the horizon. She had only encountered the ocean through the pages of books and the frames of pictures, yet her heart yearned to construct a sandcastle and discover seashells along the shore. Adrian agreed instantly, only to discover that experiencing the ocean through her perspective was more desirable than any trip or indulgence he had ever yearned for. Upon returning home that evening, they carefully opened a small envelope that Maggie had handed to them earlier that day. It came from Hazel. It was sealed and dated 3 weeks prior to her passing. Within the confines of the envelope lay a photograph, a vintage print capturing Hazel cradling a newborn Lily in a hospital bed, both weary yet beaming with joy. On the back, Hazel had inscribed a note in her recognizable script, "Adrian, I always knew she'd end up with you. I truly long to have witnessed it." Adrian remained silent for an extended period after finishing it. He cradled the photograph delicately in one hand while gently holding Lily's small hand in the other. Later that night, once she had drifted off to sleep, he carefully framed the photo and set it on his desk beside the drawing that Lily had created. The focus wasn't on substituting Hazel or diminishing the sorrow of her absence, it was about cherishing her memory as they embraced the new life they had created. He would always remember her, and he would ensure that Lily remembered her too. She would come to understand that she was profoundly cherished, not only by the mother who brought her into the world but also by the father who had once doubted his capacity to love. As dawn broke, Lily slipped into his room, quietly nestling beside him beneath the warm blankets. Without uttering a word, she nestled her head beneath his chin and softly murmured, "Good morning, Daddy." For the first time, she spoke the words with unwavering certainty. He shut his eyes and embraced her tightly, fully aware that nothing in his existence, neither the enterprise he established, nor the riches he amassed, nor the power he once grasped, would ever hold greater significance than this instant. He had stepped out of a serene existence crafted solely for his own solitude. He existed solely for her. Summer slipped in softly, ushering in golden mornings and warm evenings that lingered longer than they ought to have. Adrian discovered that he was roused by Lily's voice more frequently than by any alarm clock. She would quietly enter his room, clutching her bunny in one hand and a fresh idea in the other. At times, it was a breakfast in bed crafted from imaginary toast; at other moments, it was a curious inquiry about clouds, dinosaurs, or the mystery of why birds never appeared to lose their way. He had never envisioned a life such as this, yet now that it was his reality, the thought of returning to the silence that once characterized him felt unimaginable. His world was richer now, brimming with melodies, joy, the sporadic outburst, and the relentless, exquisite disorder of parenthood. They ventured to the ocean. Lily donned a sun hat that seemed oversized for her small head, clutching a plastic pail in each hand, embodying the essence of purpose as if her task held the utmost significance in the universe. Adrian observed her from his seat, his sleeves pushed up and grains of sand slipping through his fingers, and recognized the extent of his transformation. He continued to check emails and make decisions for a company valued in the billions, yet his time was no longer solely dedicated to business. It was a time for moments like these, observing Lily as she chased the waves and gathered broken shells, treating them like precious treasures. She presented him with one shaped like a heart and said, "This is for Mommy." She would surely appreciate this one, he thought, nodding silently as he carefully tucked it away in his pocket. Upon returning home, they transformed a corner of the house exclusively for Hazel's delight. Lily came up with the idea. A modest shelf adorned with framed photographs, a selection of her mother's music books, and the heart-shaped shell they had collected from the beach. Each evening, as the day drew to a close, Lily would bid it good night, softly sharing her thoughts and wishes in a gentle whisper. Adrian never inquired about her words. It was her realm, her bond, and he honored it. One evening, she turned to him and said, "I think Mommy would like you now," and he smiled, gently brushing her hair back from her face. He replied gently, aware that his only option was to continue demonstrating it. The adoption papers were signed long ago, yet the essence of their connection had grown far beyond what any legal document could encapsulate. They marked their first family anniversary in a serene manner, just the two of them crafting a cake together, creating a delightful chaos in the kitchen, and swaying barefoot to the tunes she chose. He allowed her to select the music, despite it being incomprehensible to him. She erupted in laughter, gasping for air as he attempted to twirl her and sent a mixing bowl crashing to the floor. Within that laughter, in that fleeting moment they shared, he glimpsed a future, imperfect, unscripted, and entirely their own. Adrian began implementing changes in the workplace. He established a foundation in Hazel's honor, dedicated to assisting single parents and children navigating the challenges of grief. He chose not to reveal it through a press release or interviews. He simply guided resources, assembled a team, and allowed the results to convey their own story. It seemed to hold significance in a manner that figures and transactions never could. One evening, as he tucked Lily in, he shared the story with her, and she inquired if they could assist other children in locating their absent fathers. He pressed his lips gently to her forehead and murmured, "That's the plan." As the season progressed, Lily started referring to him as Dad consistently. It had shed all doubt and indecision. It felt effortless. It was genuine. Each time she uttered those words, Adrian sensed them settle in his chest, heavy with the weight of a promise. He continued to face difficult days, grappled with self-doubt, and harbored fears of disappointing her. Yet, each embrace at night, every chuckle in the morning, and every drawing haphazardly affixed to his office walls served as a reminder that love transcended the notion of perfection. It was about being there, about stepping forward even in uncertainty, about maintaining composure through both the chaos and the grace. One evening, after sharing a tale and dimming the light, she softly murmured in the shadows, "Thank you for discovering me." He took his time to reply. His throat constricted, and his heart swelled with emotion. Ultimately, he expressed his gratitude for the opportunity. As she slipped into slumber, her hand nestled in his, Adrian lingered for what felt like an eternity, captivated by the gentle rhythm of her breath, fully aware that this serene, unremarkable moment was the most remarkable experience he had ever known. He devoted his existence to pursuing mastery, tranquility, and achievement. At last, he discovered tranquility in the unexpected, in the clamor, in affection. And the man who once shunned every emotional risk had realized that the true treasure lay not in what he had constructed, but in the person he had transformed into. Neither the CEO, nor the millionaire, nor the individual who shied away from connection. He was the father of Lily. In the life they now embraced, that held immense significance. To me, the conclusion of this narrative is precisely what it required, subtle, profoundly moving, and brimming with well-deserved optimism. It avoids relying on dramatic twists or extravagant gestures, instead drawing its strength from subtle, intimate moments that hold significant meaning. Adrian's evolution is neither abrupt nor flawless, it reveals itself slowly, shaped by unease, sorrow, and an unexpected capacity for love. The beauty of the conclusion lies in its ability to acknowledge the pain of the past rather than erase it. It embraces that pain, learns from it, and constructs something more resilient in its stead. Lily's presence reveals a side of Adrian he never realized was there, and witnessing his transformation into that role, not out of obligation but from a genuine choice, is profoundly touching. The narrative illustrates that family transcends mere biology or legal ties, it embodies dedication, bonds, and the bravery to be present each and every day. Ultimately, Adrian's heroism doesn't stem from his wealth or success, rather, it arises from his ability to be present, embrace vulnerability, and open his heart to love completely. In my view, that represents the most impactful type of conclusion.